Good morning, everyone. Can we all hear me? Hello, good morning. Can we hear me? For the mentees, can we hear me?
Yes, I can hear you at least.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much for helping me confirm that. Welcome to class, everyone. Thank you for joining. Please, I would like to kindly encourage the mentees down the call to notify the other members of the group to join in for class. Please do well to reach out to your co-mentees so that we can have more mentees in session. Thank you. So once again, welcome to class, everyone. We are currently in week 4 of the JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship program for the energy industry. We have gone quite far in the program, and we did well officially. The energy class will be ending next week. So I want to encourage the mentees to take as much advantage of the class as much as they can, right? Because like I said, the program will soon be rounding up and coming to an end. So quickly, the topic we'll be treating today is energy crisis impacts and possible solutions. All right, so I will just go straight to introduce our mentors for today. Our first mentor that we already have in class is Mr. Ayobami Dafe. Thank you so much, Mr. Ayobami, for joining and for always being here with us throughout the course of this quarter or this program itself. We really, really do appreciate your presence. You are welcome today in class. Our second mentor, okay, we have Mr. Amitabh Prasad. He's tentative. We are not sure if he'll be able to join, but if he does, we'll do well to receive him. Our third mentor for today that we expect in the session is Mr. Okeogene Ubehe. So Mr. Okeogene will be the third mentor for today. Our fourth mentor is Mr. Etulam Aldu. Mr. Etulam is already in session. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. We are happy to have you in class. And least I forget, yesterday was, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday was Mr. Ayobami's birthday. So before we start class, we just want to wish you a special happy birthday from all of us here at JIIPCC. We ask that the good Lord continue to strengthen you as you strive in everything that you do. So we thank you
Thank
very, very much for everything that you do for us. So yes, sir. So we'll be heading straight into this session. We'll be heading straight into the session for today, and we have Mr. Okay, we'll be taking presentations first from Mr. Etlam, then we'll head over to Mr. Ayobami, just like the way we have been doing. We'll take presentations from mentors, then we'll go back to mentees. So, Mr. Islam, you're welcome to class. I would like to hear from you in like the next 20 minutes. Share your thoughts on the topic for today: energy crisis, impact, and possible solutions. You're welcome, sir. Mr. Islam, are you with us?
Something's wrong with it. Network. Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir, we can hear you now, sir.
Sorry, I've been having some kind of connection issues with my wireless. Anyway, I'll just be on speaker now. Yes, it's quite exciting to be here once again. And can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you clearly.
It's clearly okay. Okay. Do you have my slides? The previous. Yeah, or I can share if you want.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, so maybe you can help me share it. Um,
Okay. Let me try to bring it up now.
just let me see if I can do it myself. get a bit. It's up now, right? Are we? Okay.
Yes, it's
Okay. So once again, it's a pleasure. The last time I couldn't make it because I was in the field, so it was a bit crashing with my schedule, and I was not able to make the fossil fuels class. I'm just back to Nigeria this week from the Middle East and for my field work, so I just tried to make sure that I joined the class today. And I know we've been discussing much on various issues that impact in the aspect of the energy industry, and we're able to understand fossil fuels and every other aspect. So generally, we'll be looking at energy crisis. Like we've already seen before, it's my video on. Can you see me? Or just maybe not.
video. It
Okay.
seems your video is fancy for some reason. I don't know. Maybe there's a challenge.
Let me see. I'm trying to. Well, let's just go so that we don't really take too much of our time. It's as much as we can hear me now, because if I try to fix these technical issues now, it will take a lot of our time generally. So, okay, so we're talking about the energy in a crisis, impact and possible solutions. Um, Generally, I made this simple presentation to be able to get a glimpse of the understanding. So just get a brief introduction what energy crisis is all about, brief history, some types of energy crisis, what causes energy crisis, and the impacts, as well as possible solutions and conclusion. Some of the issues are already might be updated, and maybe I will just make some statement in terms of the changes that have happened as per recent situations on grounds within the geopolitical landscapes, as well as the current issues in terms of possible solutions that are having some positive impact in Nigeria and globally. So if we just go briefly, you can understand that I don't. The next is a slide moving.
Okay. You can just let
Oh,
me
yeah.
know when you want to. It's like
Okay.
I'm
So,
very-
okay. So in general, this is the agenda. Okay. You're the one doing it, right? Okay. So if you look at it, there is this dark black background, energy crisis in the middle. You'll see this on the left-hand side of the slide. You see where we're talking about issues in terms of contributing factors that have to do with the energy crisis. You see failures of electricity, production issues. There's some speculations, oil, reserve, gas, the markets, industry-wise, it affects both consumption, the economy as a whole. So these are various factors that can be able to affect the energy spectrum. So if you look at every day, just go to the next slide. We need energy for our daily lives. It can be gas, it can be through electricity, it can be through solar energy, different means for survival. And then where we are like now, I'm being powered by and the power supply generally within the national grid just went off. I'm just home and I had to turn on my inverter. And that's what I'm using right now to be able to power my laptop and the light at home to be able to run the system currently. So energy is very critical in our daily lives. Energy is very critical in terms of energy security for nations, in terms of economic development, in terms of industry, in terms of all aspects of our life. So any significant shortage in energy supply to a country or region to meet green demand has, in terms of energy crisis, results in the changes for both economic, social, and environmental sustainability has to do with energy crisis. So it occurs when the available energy sources are unable to fulfill the needs of a population, industry, or a nation. I was reading 2 days ago about New Zealand. In 2018, they had because of this green agenda, they had discussions for the last administration to be able to cut off oil and gas exploration for in New Zealand, and they stopped these. And so there's recently, I think this month, the new government also started saying, okay, we need to go back to issuing licenses for oil and gas exploration, because they were having issues now with gas supplies in terms of the energy security. So this are the kind of things that will happen in terms of when you look at it, we're going green, and they started having issues, and they're looking at, okay, well, we think we can move ahead in terms of things is impacting on both our economic and our social and environmental life. So we need to go back a bit into oil and gas exploration and see that we have gas supply. So shortage of energy can actually lead to crisis. Okay, so you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so a brief historical concept we will look at in terms of energy crisis. So, well, I was saying initially that energy crisis can be impacted in both economic aspect of it as well as in terms of production shortages. So in the 1970s, where we started looking at the peak oil production demand in developed nations, and also the oil embargoes from the OPEC, and when this happened within the Gulf, that we started having this idea that it's going to be peak oil demand, there's going to be in developed nations. And even with current, this idea of oil is going to flat out at some point. In the United States, this started happening because of production growth at a specific level, and it started declining. So before we started having in the late 2000s of the shale boom and increase in the oil and gas production for the shale oil and gas. So we started having, because of war issues with the Gulf War, it started having issues in terms of oil embargoes from the OPEC nations against trying to impact on the nations. This had to come. So if you look at in the 2000s, oil prices rise, oil demand increases, there are production stagnation, the falling of US dollar, you start having about all of these issues that contributed in the early 2000s. Within 2005, 2008, we started having also energy shortages in China, and damages to power networks, and also diesel and coal shortages. Upon this also happened within the period for the financial crisis. And we started seeing the imbalances that affects nations. In terms of 2008, we started seeing the Central Asia crisis again, extreme cool weather and low water temperature, water levels affecting hydroelectric power. So these aspects also, it's not just only oil and gas, it's not just only the fossil fuels, you have also hydroelectricity in terms of renewable energy supplies. So it can be impacted in terms of also how the availability of water for dams used for electricity generation can impact droughts, can impact hydroelectric. This can cause uh, issues in terms of power generation for countries that rely more on hydroelectric. This is part can contribute to energy crisis also, where we have started having high energy prices, the demand surge after the COVID-19 pandemic. These are issues that came up in 2021. And by 2022, because of the issues with the Russian and Ukraine war, we started having issues in terms of natural gas supplies, high energy costs in the European Union, energy crisis, Russian invasion of Ukraine, gas supply costs of the EU, French nuclear plants shut down as a result of the green agenda, and as well as a renewed focus for European Union. And some of the nuclear plants have been running for decades in France, and the idea that, okay, going green as well as diversifying their portfolio for power generation, they started shutting down some nuclear power plants as a result of also age. So this impacted in terms of energy supplies. And so you start seeing summer drought, no water for hydropower. I mentioned similar issues like this. Then in Africa, we started having this issue in ports. These are countries that have been stable with power supplies. And if we talk of electricity cuts, maybe we are very frequent with it in Nigeria in particular. And so some of the issues that started impacting in South Africa is that known as load shedding. I mean, you need to share particular areas will have power this maybe the next 4 or 5 hours to 12 hours. These other areas will have later. So this started so average 8 hours per day costing about 2 to 3% of GDP growth to the economy. So as far as April 2023, the level 6 load shedding was implemented as generating units failed at Tukuta and some other plants according to the World Bank in South Africa. So this is not just something that is only peculiar with South Africa. We have within sub-Saharan Africa and also developing worlds that are experiencing this issue of um, power cuts. And this is because of insufficient supply and also in terms of grid infrastructure and power generation units that can be able to meet up with the demand for the population. So this is like a pretty historical concept in terms of the energy crisis that is going on. And we see today that energy cost as well as the availability of supply is impacting on in terms of the energy crisis we're having. So in Nigeria, we started having before now the onset of the Dangote refinery, a lot of queues for petroleum products. We started seeing that because of reduced import as well as now the emergence of the Dangote refinery. We started having supply of petroleum products, and you could see over time now there's a serious reduction in terms of queuing for petroleum products because of these availabilities in place. So that's an aspect that is positive, whereby we have again, new infrastructure that have been built in terms of downstream refining operations, as well as boosting existing storage capacity. So then you had the issues of where supply aspect in terms of crude oil supplies to refineries due to domestic issues and politics that is involved and agreements that led to some shortages in crude oil supplies. Then the Dangote started importing from the US. All of this impact on the availability for energy products. Okay, go to the next slide, please. Okay, so energy crisis in terms of when we look at the types. Energy crisis in terms of aspect that has to do with supply side energy crisis, demand side energy crisis, and structural energy crisis. So these are the kind of types of energy crisis that can impact within the nation. So if there is an inadequate production or unavailability of energy resources such as fossil fuels, renewable energy or electricity, this is called what the supply side energy crisis. So resource blessed nations like Nigeria. Okay, so if I give an example of the Dangote refinery aspect of it is just a simple example whereby we have the resources, but due to contractual agreements, as well as dwindling production, difficult in terms of meeting up with the domestic crude agreement with the Dangote refinery. So you started having a situation whereby Dangote ends up importing crude oil, WTI, from the US. So you also look at nations like China, who depend mostly on other resource-based countries like Russia and the Middle East. So if you start having issues in geopolitical systems in terms of supply chain dynamics, let's say currently with the Israel and the Palestine and the Hamas war, as well as the Houthis, whereby within the Red Sea and as well as the Gulf of Aden, they started attacking crude oil shipments. This actually gives, and also the Gulf of Hormuz, where you have a lot of liquefied natural gas coming in from Qatar and going into Asia. So with the Iran-Israel issues that happened, this created a kind of fear within the supply chain as well as reduce. So these impacts can cause. So an issue also with is a similar example is with the European Union, whereby you started having cuts because of the Ukraine-Russian war, and energy costs for gas and gas supplies to Europe was cut off. and it started impacting on domestic industry in Germany and production, as well as increased energy costs. So this is kind of supply side energy crisis. For demand side energy costs, so when the demand for energy exceeds the available supply, so this puts stress on existing resources. So we started hearing of peak demand in the global dynamics of oil and gas, as well as also energy supplies, whereby, the idea that there's going to be peak oil supply, peak demand, that demand is going to be higher than supply. We started hearing about with the current outlook for energy outlook that just released recently by BP. They made an adjustment to say, okay, see that net zero is going to be possible by 2050. So we see demand increasing. We see the fight for resources. So countries like we saw a situation whereby in Spain, where because of so much on the national grid collapse, I kind of heard some underground information that it was Algeria that stepped in to be able to supply electricity, direct switch for Spain to be able to survive within this period. So these are kind of issues that come. So when you have both structural issues in terms of availability, related issues in the infrastructure, distribution, and transmission of energy, this causes inefficiencies in the energy supply chain. We have a lot of grid failures, particularly within the electricity national grid network in Nigeria. This is not only common here, it's common in other developed nations as well as other places like South Africa as well. So these are infrastructural issues. We have issues in terms of gas supply networks. We have in terms of issues that has to do with pipeline vandalism that affects transportation of crude oil within the value chain, as well as also looking at distribution of gases to end users. Particularly if you look at the domestic gas network, we need to build infrastructure. We have issues with GenCos trying to get in gas for power generation, as well as distribution within that transmission aspect of electricity in Nigeria. So these are things that where you have high demand, but the infrastructure in place is limited to be able to meet with the demand. So these are kind of issues that has to do with structural energy crisis. Can we go to the next slide, please? So causes of energy crisis, I've said before, like the last one. So overpopulation, poor infrastructure, energy waste, poor distribution, major accident, natural calamities, wars and attacks, political border obstruction, and lack of storage. So every energy crisis can be caused mainly by a shortage of resources, disruption to the supply chain, and sudden upticks in demand, and sometimes all three areas encompassing. So wars, market manipulation, industrial action can lead to localized energy shortages. Excessive energy consumption can strain resources and lead to shortages, and outdated infrastructure can cause disruption in energy supply. And then changes in governments, conflict, and regime changes can disrupt oil and gas production. If you look at the cases in Venezuela, and currently it's a very resource-rich nation in terms of oil and gas, and because of political instability and with the alignment with the United States, it started having issues whereby there are sanctions and restrictions on Venezuela. Both in Iran also have this kind of thing. So when you have this kind of geopolitics involved in terms of regime changes, it can impact in terms of energy supply, which can lead to energy crisis. You started having issues of where in Venezuela, for able to have petrol PMS available because of dysfunctionality of the refineries, and also sanctions started affecting this dynamic. So wasteful and inefficient use of fuels can deplete resources and contribute to shortages. We started having in terms of the energy efficiency is being talked about consistently in terms of the energy use, building energy efficiency, and all of that. So in developed times now, this idea of energy efficiency for buildings and big infrastructures are being in place for proper energy management. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so what impacts do we have in terms of energy crisis? I've said it before, we have economic impact. High energy prices can lead to inflation, increase production costs, and decrease economic productivity. We are seeing how in Nigeria generally, we had because of the subsidy regime we had before, we had the PMS and petrol prices at lower, diesel, AGO at lower rates. So, I mean, with the current government change, removal of subsidy and all of that, it started bringing on strain in terms of the cost of energy. You see a liter of PMS going above 1,000 naira, and these have incurred some kind of additional inflationary cost on the population, whereby food prices and transportation costs have increased. So these are kind of economic impacts. You see in Germany, Germany is struggling. A lot of industries are doing some offshore sourcing for their production to China because of energy costs as a result of cuts for gas supplies to European Union. So social impact energy strategies can cause disruption in daily life, including power cuts, reduced heating or cooling, and limited transportation. Imagine the winter time, the high demand. I think in the United Kingdom, when the old EU energy crisis was happening, where we started having some issues, we started seeing where the wind tax, all issues came up, and reduced oil and gas exploration in the Northeast started bringing up an idea whereby in the United Kingdom relies more of the importation of natural gas from other nations, and the cost of natural gas for cooking and heating increased. So during winter, it becomes very high strain. The government even had to come in to bring in subsidies for maybe just an alleviation in terms of the energy bills for the local population. So these are kind of the things that happen. So in political impact, energy crisis often trigger political tensions, both domestically and internationally, as countries compete for limited resources. So you have environmental impact in the face of energy crisis. Nations might resort to environmentally damaging energy sources to meet their needs, leading to accelerated environmental degradation and climate change. So we started seeing the rebirth of coal in places like India and both China, the idea of gas to power. And at some point during this energy crisis issues, started going back to coal, even in European Union. Some European Union, as a result of the Ukraine and Russian war, started going back to their coal plants to be able to survive and ensure energy security. So this, as a result, will generate more emissions and also increase carbon footprint, leading to climate change correctly. Okay, you could see in terms of the photo I have there, some in those days where people standing on the queue, and I think this is getting better now. You see where somebody is reading with candle at night. You see a drought, you see production, and so these are the impacts you can have in terms of the energy crisis. Next slide, please. So I've said this before. This was way back. I said how Dangote refinery is able to suspend fuel sales in local currency and all of that. Subsidies hit high in fuel subsidies hit high in terms of South Africa as a result of energy crisis. A lot of companies were exiting Nigeria. This was in 2023. Some of these things, so energy crisis can lead to higher energy prices, which can increase costs. We've said it already, and reduce consumer spending. This can slow down economic growth, increase inflation, and cause unemployment, according to John Macris. So these factors are already there. So you started seeing people, oh, because of the high cost. No, I think some people say, oh, clamoring for bringing back subsidy. Okay, no, government has removed subsidy. We want to see the impact on how prices will be reduced. You started seeing situations whereby Dangote refinery reduces prices of petrol, and literally NNPC will increase, reduce, and all of that, and trying to see how they can balance it. But we think over time, it will come to a point whereby it's going to be beneficial in terms of the population, where we have increased infrastructure in terms of refineries. Okay, next slide, please. So what kind of possible solutions we can have in terms of the energy crisis? So investing in infrastructural development. We need a robust gas and power network and roads in terms of distribution. According to Gas Master Plan in Nigeria, the idea in terms of domestic gas network for developed clients, you see it in the US and the European Union, you see whereby gas distribution networks from the national pipeline system down to the states is properly managed and implemented. So in terms of delivery and infrastructure in place, you see nations that have proper gas infrastructure and are actually planning for green hydrogen. They are thinking about integration of this gas network with hydrogen in terms of distribution. So for better investment in infrastructure for grid and both in terms of distribution, mini grids and all of that, it will help in terms of possible, these are solutions to be able to help in terms of our energy crisis, enhance energy efficiency. I've said it before, for industrial nations, the clamor for energy efficiency in big, huge buildings in terms of production sites is it's put forward in platforms for discussions, both in policy-wise and advocacy. So in embracing renewable energy, as much as we have solar, wind, and other renewable sources, uh, there is the necessity to ensure that for the idea that for rural areas, mini grid networks are very important in order to provide the necessary energy supplies that are needed, particularly lighting and basic power that is needed. Innovation in energy storage and transmission, this is aspect in terms of you look at both the electric vehicle as well as energy storage. So for data centers, we can see the likes of big companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia investing in nuclear energy in terms of helping to see that there's necessary power supply for data center. So energy storage is also another aspect in terms of bringing in when we reduce energy footprint. So that aspect that is developing very seriously to be able to help in terms of when bringing into the energy mix renewable energy. So this is an important aspect that is being pushed forward. We have talked about advancing nuclear energy. Small nuclear reactors are something that is very important. Last week or this week, I think, I was reading about how Iran and Russia had an agreement with Rosatom, which is a kind of nuclear power production company, as well as sign an agreement in terms of building small-scale reactors that will power Iran. We've heard this SMR, ENI, and UK had an agreement also on this aspect recently. So implementing sustainable energy policies is part of this, and ensuring the diversified and sustainable energy portfolio. So government direct assistance or by limiting prices for consumers, subsidies cannot be taken fully away. It's both in developed nations, there are times government comes in to shock, to just help to reduce the shock within the system in terms of incentives. So these subsidies are always going to be in the system. So enhanced grid access is there. And so this is something in Nigeria, particularly grid access, improved infrastructure for transmission and distribution of generated power electricity is critical to ensuring that we meet up with resolving the issues of power cuts and energy supply for the population. Let's go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Hello. Hello. Hello.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, please, the next slide.
Mr. Islam, can you hear?
Yes, I can now. Okay, so finally, so I've just said about, so there is possible solutions in Nigeria generally. Is I made some slide in terms of flow. Let me see, I think I can share back again since
Okay,
I'm
so my
losing.
network.
Your network, okay, it's back now.
Yes,
Let me
it's back.
share.
I can
You
reshare.
can still share. Okay. Okay, so in terms of possible solutions, I've come up these and I've already said it before that optimize supply network to reduce dependency of petroleum powered transportation. We want to ensure that there is a lot of reduction in dependency. So you see the idea that Dangote refinery came up with using CNG also will help compress natural gas. Then a lot of cost is being incurred in terms of distribution of petroleum products when it has to do with the trucks using diesel or traditional oil and gas products. Although CNG is still part of the process, but it's a bit in terms of consumption and optimize and reduce emissions. It's a way better option. So consider other modes of transport such as rail or marine freight or where possible. And the rail aspect, it's a big challenge in Nigeria. It's something that you need a lot of investment in terms of infrastructure. So invest in fuel storage facilities to store petrol at times of scarcity. This is where we have strategic reserves that comes into play, whereby you could be able to store up, and when there's period of scarcity, you can be able to shore to help within the system. It's areas to avoid stockouts or implement efficient inventory management procedures. This is important in terms of national policy as also agricultural management. So adopting renewable energy sources like solar, biomass, and hydro. One of the dams recently in the last 2 weeks in Kanja, so after it's been completed, I think it should be doing around, I forgot, maybe 50 megawatt or 5 or so. I can't get the specific, but one of the dams was being completed recently with the Chinese company, which will help also improve the power supply in Nigeria. So improving and also modernizing energy infrastructure such as smart grid solutions and smart cities. This is an area comes into play, particularly within cities like Lagos, Aba, Port Harcourt, Kano, maybe in business climes, within these industrial centers, this can be implemented. So also energy strategy in terms of planning and implementation, forming the financing system for decarbonization projects. Also, these are areas that can be looked at. Invest in gas infrastructure and onboard the national grid. This is natural gas policy and natural gas plan has to be implemented in terms of not just producing natural gas for LNG export. We need to look at also in terms of domestic aspect of use for LPG. You know, the cost of cooking gas is still high, and as a resource nation, Nigeria as a whole, it's a gas nation more than an oil nation. So we need to harness this and also improve in terms of gas infrastructure pipelines. I know of the existing pipelines that go all the way to Ogun State for the industrial areas. There is one from Port Harcourt to Aba, helps in the industry, also the power generation facilities. These are something that you see the AKK pipeline that has been extended across the country towards the northern part of Nigeria. These are infrastructures that can help in terms of industrialization, also energy supply. So implement strategy. Find out that when there is issues in terms of Trump tends to, but it's now buying more since the prices of crude have been lower a bit than before. So it's been showing up, boosting up the petroleum reserves. This is something we don't have in Nigeria. Maybe something that you can look at. Then functional refineries and supply networks. The refineries Dangote came up. Still happening. We have issues with the Port Harcourt refineries and Warri refineries, the Kaduna refineries that become a bit of political in terms of where we have it's on, it's not working. I was reading, so I think one of the guidance news or single one guide about how the contractor is being called upon to say they need to speak our technical notes for particularly with the Marybont Port Harcourt refinery, how this is being managed. We started hearing issues about NNPC former officials being tackled by the corruption agencies. So clear pricing mechanism for petroleum products. This is very critical, particularly with the recent issues of where we started having opacity within the downstream sector. This is something that needs to be cut off and resolved within the regulatory aspect of the business to be able to have clear pricing in the framework. And we should be able to understand that, okay, this is what we are paying for. And the next slide. Hello. Okay, so can we just go to the final uh, for me to just make so in summary, energy crises have the potential to significantly affect the global economy, and several reasons may lead to their occurrences in the future, although precise people in government were able to make probable interruptions in energy supply networks. So we need to be able to look at aspects of how best fit energy prices, energy prices can be managed. This on the policy aspect lies with government in terms of putting on policies that will support production and supply and in improving investment in infrastructure. For on our own part as people, we can be able to talk about advocacy, call for a renewed agenda to be able to look at how we can show off the impact of the energy crisis. Thank you very much.
Dennis, you are muted, please.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought I was unmuted. So thank you so much, Mr. Etlam, for your presentation. We really did enjoy it. Thank you for your time and your shared knowledge in class. So we'll be taking our next mentor's presentation. We have two mentors in class. We'll be going with Mr. Ayobami's presentation, and then we'll take Mr. Okeogene's presentation last before the mentee's presentation. So Mr. Okeogene, please, over to you, sir. Mr. Ayobami, sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Let me try and share my screen. Okay, please can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Just a minute, please.
Sorry, you said something, sir. Okay, you're muted, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Trying to. Okay, so you can see my screen. Yeah, perfect. So yes, like today's class is on as Etulam has spoken, quite very well actually. It's taking us around the world and giving us facts, and this is what it is basically. There's a whole lot of things happening in the energy space, be it oil and gas, power, or the renewables. So yeah, and our agenda today is having an introduction. We speak a bit of the crisis in oil and gas, also a bit of the crisis in power, then also renewables, then we have a conclusion. So hopefully it would run quite as fast as possible. Yeah, since Etulan has done us the grace of speaking quite a lot about it. Yes. So introduction. Yes, energy crisis is of course, it's a frequently discussed topic, just like I said, and mentor Etulan has also spoken about the wars, how policies of government change, how Cold War happens between countries, and the effect it has on the energy space. And that's why we have a lot of economies at play. The prices are goes up, much demand sometimes in some places, and the like. Like the Russia-Ukraine crisis that happened, of course, affected a lot of Europe Germany, one of them, had to open their coal mine. Spoke about UK, spoke about the French and the nuclear power stations and everything. So there are a lot of things happening, and of course, some countries are trying to go as much as green as possible, while also trying to balance the fact that there's a need, which might either be household needs or industrial need, or even also, I mean, economical needs of one particular country. So it's a difficult thing to do, and of course, those in power, I mean, their heads are always quite big, trying to resolve all this because of energy is quite important in the existence of human being. Basically, that's it. Because we use it to produce, we use it to power our manufacturing centers, we use it to move from one place to another. So it's quite critical. I mean, discussion to be held around the world, yes. So Nigeria, you know about Nigerian power crisis, and of course, we'll do a bit of a more in depth in subsequent slides. Yes, about producing adequate electricity supply for domestic households and industries. Oil and gas also, a lot of crisis around it, from gas flaring to queues on filling stations, and bunkering, and lack of refinery, which thank God is much better now thanks to Dangote refinery. So, and of course, the renewables also, which is something progressively in quotes, Nigeria is working on to try and catch up with the world. Yes. So on oil and gas, economically, we know that Nigeria relies a lot on fossil fuel. This cannot be overemphasized because even our budget is being benchmarked with prices of fuel. So that means in anticipation of sales, of future sales, we actually benchmark our budgets. So that's how much we rely on fuel, especially fossil fuel. Yes, of course. Oil and gas also accounts for a lack of percentage, like I said, about earnings and, of course, government revenue. So, yes. The major regulations, which I think we'll do more with next week, is the PIA, the Nigerian Energy Transition Plan, which I think we spoke about last week. And, of course, there are a lot of regulations, licensing permits, approvals from the NUPRC, that's the upstream regulatory, regulatory, and the midstream and downstream regulatory agencies of governments. And of course, we have also some interesting regulations about local content in oil and gas, even in power also, and of course in maritime, which we call cargo charge. Yes. Then the issues now, which we are experiencing in Nigeria, basically, we are of course having over dependency of crude oil, and which trying to see how much Nigeria can diversify off that. I mean, so because right now it's more of a strong oil and gas prices in the world. It's really an OPEC is going along most likely a barrel of our oil. So that means the forces as a way of impacting our trying to, so much to have a lot of IGR taxation from the maritime now and everything to see how much external forces can affect our economic planning, basically. Yes. Of course, diversity from fossil fuel at the moment can reduce Nigeria GDP. We have host communities, Buaha, yes. I mean, I think it's getting better now. I mean, before we see a lot of hands being carried in the Niger Delta and everything. And I think like a percentage of 1% or so of the earnings of the oil and gas previous year has been put into that fund. BD hospitals, making up roads, lots. I'm currently working is trying to build a 3,000 megawatts capital operations in particular in Nigeria, but also provide free power to the communities around there. So these are things that CSR initiative to help communities around suffering from or are exposed to one or two things from the oil and gas explorations, basically. So, and another beautiful thing of the act says that if peradventure after having that in place, there's still now a whole lot of those communities going ahead to destroy assets of the oil and gas company, maybe the pipelines and coal, then the monies for the repairs will be taken from that fund that's supposed to be go into providing amenities for those communities. So that's supposed to checkmate those communities from destroying assets that are of the oil exploration company. Yes. Of course, we have seen NNPC divert the PIA diversify to a limited liability company, but I would say it's still a transitional process to be a private company because I still see them more of a government agency. But over time, I believe that there'll be a full transition into a private limited liability company, hopefully, and maybe even start having public investors come into it and other investors come into it also. So maybe that will materialize in the next future. Then yes, commercialization of gas flaring. We speak a lot about gas flaring, especially when it comes to environmental sustainability efforts. And yes, I think as of last year, some licenses were given to companies. I think August, September, thereabout, to see how we can commercialize the use of the gas. I mean, use it for a greater and a better usefulness, basically. You know, more like using it for create power and like so. Yeah. So I know that a lot of licenses were released last year. It seems to be moving a bit slower than I thought it will be, but hopefully it's still a right direct. I mean, movement in the right direction. Hopefully, we'll see more on how to harness the potential of gas flaring into something more productive for us and for the economy. Yes, of course, environmental sustainability and governance is quite important now. Everybody talks about ESG everywhere, and even now to get some grants and some loans, they'll ask you how far you have gone in your ESG efforts. So we have to be careful about environment and do more sustainable practices, and of course the governance of the company must key into the environmental sustainability efforts. Yes, of that ESG is trying to promote. Yes, Excellent spoke a lot about Dangote crude issues, so I'll skip that. And he also spoke about a lot about subsidies. You know, subsidies has always been a burning topic because there are a lot of theories. Some people would say subsidies doesn't exist. Some will say it exists. Some will say it has been taken out. Some will say that in one form or the other, subsidies still exist. And this goes beyond power. This goes beyond oil and gas. Also power also. And so that's why you see a lot of Band A, Band B, Band C discussion now. You know, I mean, Band A is good. I mean, there's always lights, basically. I enjoy Band A in my home in Lagos, but the fees are pretty high. You know, a lot. I end up spending like times 3 or times 4 when I was a Band B member. So, yeah, but is there lights? It's fine. And I leave that to you to ponder on how good it is. But the reality is this. At least I've been involved in power projects in several regions, mini grids, 3,000 megawatts, 1,500 megawatts, gas team, power, you know, and also renewable. I'm currently working on the mini grid in Ondo and Niger mini grid, and it's on renewables, yeah, basically. So all this when it comes to the commercial feasibility, it's always a concern because you find out that even a mini grid, the renewable, you see you paying between 400 to 600 depending on the band, and band A is 268. So that's how expensive Gencos are feeling. That they feel that they're not making their monies, they're taking a lot of loans and grants, and they're not being able to pay back their loans and grants. And that's what triggered the band A to see how far they can make some money and make some profits. But whether there's any truth or not, we'll leave that to another discussion. But the fact remains that it's a struggle for Gencos actually in the country currently. Yes. Moving to our next slide on power. Yes, power forms a bulk of our generation. You know, the Kanji Dam owned by I think Mainstreaming in Abuja and the Jebab Dam also. Yeah. So you have a lot of the investments in power now. Even the oil and gas companies are also going into power. The Transcorps and Totals, they all have power grids. Sometimes to CPP to power their own operations, since they can rely on national grid, but also sometimes to even make some money as much as they can. So it's a good thing. So we have a steady growth of investments. Like I said, it's really large interests in mini grids now up and down. A friend of mine is building a 100 megawatt mini grid already. So you see that springing up. Shoreline has one in industrial area in Ogun State. So you see a lot of pockets of and of course us too, that we have solar power in our homes, other forms of generating power for ourselves. Also, photovoltaic, planes and everything. So all this is also us trying to see how far we can also do one or two small investments. And the good part about Electricity Act is it allows you to actually produce, and you can actually, I think up to 1 megawatt you can produce, and it's not enough. You can actually support your neighbor without a license. So that's the beauty of the Electricity Act 2023. So that means in our own small way in our streets, we can also generate power and sell without even requiring a license. Yes, depending on how much megawatts we're producing. So Electricity Act 2023, yes, is a major, and I think we'll discuss a bit more next class on that. Then also the Nigerian Energy Transition Plan, also it's a good one. That NETP plan is quite interesting because it's a blueprint for Nigerians on how to or Nigeria how to and it covers 5 major sectors, being power, cooking, oil and gas, transportation, and industry. So we're seeing how we can improve ourselves in that, especially when we're having a shift from non-renewable into renewable energy. So it's quite interesting. I'll advise you, if you can lay a copy of that policy. It's a good policy, basically. Yes. The issues we're having in power, which is crisis we're currently having, is there's problem with transmission. Electricity Act 2023, the previous 2025 Act, was trying to see how they can tackle the transmission thing. So we have the GENCOs, who are generators, who pass the power to the transmission, who now pass it to the DISCOs, who are distribution companies. Yes, and the GENCOs claim they can make a whole lot of. They can make as much as 20,000 megawatts of power. But the fact remains is that our transmission leg cannot take that much. We don't have the capacity to take as much as the GENCO produces. That's the reality. And transmission leg always lies with the government. TCN is a government-owned agency and organ or company of Nigerians. So they can't take as much as the GENCOs can. So the question now, GENCOs are complaining that we can produce far more, but we can't even make money because we can't even give you as much power as we can make. So the Electricity Act 23 tried to see how much they can diversify the transmission leg of the power, and it provides for that transmission companies, private transmission companies can come into the game, but it will be based on if the transmission company of Nigeria complains or asks for help. So it's not automatic either. So that means if TCN says, "Oh, we need help in your axis," then the company can come and say, "Yeah, I'll provide I'll help in transition there." So that's still the whole problem. So for now, it's TCN, but hopefully, the small allowance being given for private individuals when transition leg would possibly yield a better input in the next few years, hopefully, so that we can have more power from the GENCOs, then we can also distribute more. And of course, we have more lights and more electricity to run our industries, if possible, electric cars also, and the like. Yes. So that's on problem transmission. Yes. And of course, these schools are also complaining that they're not making a lot of money. And one of the ways of helping them is the band A, to see how they can make a bit of money, because they'll tell you that most of their monies are from loans and financial institutions and investments, and they're always at double-digit loans. So they want to find a way of making a lot so that they won't run at a loss. So it's always been a running battle, because they cannot arbitrarily increase the price of power. They cannot. It has to be something that has to meet with the government, sit down and see how they can they can do that. I mean, unlike now that the oil and gas can be sold at different prices everywhere based on market forces of demand and supply, it's still the pricing regime of power is still being regulated by government. So they have to show just costs. Government has to understand them. They're private investors. They want to make some money and see how far both parties can reach a common goal. Yes. Yes, electricity prices also, like I said, I spoke about, of course, for a long, it's been rumored that the government still pays actually some money as subsidy for power. So it's not as popular as discussion like we have on oil and gas, but it's something that is set to exist. And of course, Gencos also needs to do a lot of research and development. I mean, the products I've worked on, a whole reliance is being made on foreign, I mean, foreign products because they are not readily available in Nigeria. Yes, you have to bring in your gas turbines, you have to bring in your big generators, and you have to bring in your ARSG, the EG, exhaust gas exhaust pipelines, transformers. You have to almost bring in a lot of all this. So we need to encourage local, research and development and see how we can make these things in Nigeria, and if possible, at a cheaper rates. Yes, and so that we can actually have it as a form of also an economic development in the country, whereby we will also buy exports, out of Nigeria. Then financial investment is also also a very big thing. Um, there are lots of finance organizations around, yes, but we find out that some are always not willing to give the small startups and only to finance the big ones because they feel that it's more riskier to give startups. So they will prepare to give the big players in the industry than encourage startups. And one reason why we actually have a deficit of research and development is because they really don't have grants or loans because everybody sees research and development as a very risky game. It might work and it might not work. So they readily give the big players in the industry loans and investments and then give the smaller players in the industry. So it's something that financing investment is still quite required, especially at a lower single digit. I had a discussion with quite a senior person in Nexim as a Nigeria export and I think imports bank, and it's a government agency, and it was quite encouraging that they give investment as much as 5, 6, and 9% loans depending on the industry in which you belong. So these are things that we need, and as much as these are readily available to people, then of course, I mean, you'll see more boom in that industry and take care of all the crises and issues we tend to have, and of course, possibly more cheaper power, of course, since they have more supply than maybe than is demanded. Yes, and of course, the gas of power initiative is also similar to what I spoke about commercialization of gas. Yes, so those is possible. Let's see how much, excuse me, the gas we are flaring can be used to produce power for Nigerians. Yes. Going to our next slide. Renewables. Yes. I mean, it's Nigerian Energy Transition Plan is basically on to take care of the renewables, and of course, there's still significant investment opportunities in areas of solar energy, hydrogen, and electric vehicles that we currently have in Nigeria. I don't think Innoson has started making electric vehicles yet, but I think most likely they will if, for example, we can take care of our power problems as well as at a more cheaper rate. Maybe we can see more electric vehicles in circulation in Nigeria. So it's at the development stage. I don't think government is making so much from taxes and from revenues from that area, but of course they're making something. And I think I'm happy when I see a lot of Nigerians thinking about renewable energy. It's a good space to go into. It's still new and it's riskier. Yes, like I said, and there's limited investment opportunities there, but hopefully we would see more in the nearest future on that. And of course, to transit into a more economic development later in the future. Yes, regulations majorly there are the Climate Change Act 2021 and Nigeria Energy Transition Plan. Again, yes. So these two are one of the drivers of the renewables. Yeah, and I think someone asked the question last week, and the fact remains is that it would be good that we have some policies in the country, but they're not being added to yet. So it's normal to have laws, and then one day after 5 6 years, then the government wakes up and say, oh, let's enforce it now. So we have at least a bit of regulations and policies in place. How practical, how they work in practice is difficult to say now. Then there seem to be very good regulations we have on paper, but we will know the practicability, except it's being put into practice. Then we know if amendments and subsequent changes to the laws can be accommodated. So, but first, we need to make sure that what we have on paper as laws are being followed. And of course, the agency that's saddled with the responsibility of enforcing these laws actually doing their work. So that's where it starts from before we go into to see how practical this law works in Nigeria. Yes, the issues that we have is we still do a lot of importation of technology, like I spoke earlier. I mean, more R&D, research and development is required. Nigeria is still a fossil country. We know that, so they have to fight their way through in the whole barrier. But like I said, I think there's enough space for the fossil fuel and the renewables to work hand in hand. I mean, the country is big enough to accommodate both, at a sufficient degree. So I think most likely we'll see more development in this in the next few years. But of course, the fossil fuel would still stay for a long time to come. That's what I think, my opinion, that I think will happen. Yes, and of course, more. Like I said, the Climate Change Act and the Nigerian Energy Transmission Plan also needs to be more actionable, not just on paper. We need to see more. We need to see statistics whereby, this year I'm aiming to achieve more in transportation network, reducing emission, or in industry. We see more of the carbonization in industries, or there were a lot of more reduction in gas flaring, or people are not using firewood or kerosene anymore. They're using LPG, which actually is a success story for Nigeria, actually. And people are not using so much of a generator and diesel or petrol generation. So these are the things that we want to see in action. Nigerian Energy Transmission Plan actually working. So it's good that if statistics can be produced every year to show that this is what is happening. Yes, and of course, like I said, investments. I mean, it's key to it. Investments is key to also moving forward in the renewables. Yes. Our conclusion is why we have set targets and action documents, and let's have them work. Let's see, before we start punching holes in these policies, let's see how it's being run in practice, and then we know that we still need to change this, we still need to change that. So the impact of these policies needs to be felt by the common man, basically. Yes, and to overcome this crisis, also, I mean, we need to keep a great eye on the renewables, and because as much as we like fossil fuel or more fossil fuel driven, it's important that we look at the good effect that renewables have on the environment, and see how far we can also plug into it, and see how we can marry both and existence in society together. Yes, and of course, I mean, we should create more ease of doing business in Nigeria, especially when it comes to investments in the energy industry. Let's adhere to the laws. Some investors I've spoken to in the past have always said that Nigeria is a country whereby sometimes you wake up one morning and the policy has changed, and and they want to do. It doesn't help investors knowing that the government can change the policy overnight. So as much as possible, let's have stable policies. Let's look at the effect the policies has on investors. Yes, make the bureaucratic nature of government should be streamed down as PRS minimum. We still have a lot of duplication of governments. I've seen a lot of clash between NUPLC, for example, and NIMASA when it comes to offshore maritime. So these are things that we need to have a single, and that's what I think you're trying to do with this single purpose agency, whereby all these customs, you have MPA and NIMASA all in one body, trying to make sure that these things are streamlined. I was making a joke about vehicle papers some weeks ago. I think I was saying that why do we have so many burning vehicle papers when we can just have one slip that ticks roadworthiness is there, vehicle access is there, and that's all. But we have several documentations and scattered around. So these are things that we should hopefully work on and get better at doing, and of course to encourage investments and in the country. Yes. Then of course corruption is still there, favoritism. Yes, these are constant battles we have to battle in Nigeria. Yes, and the whole subsidy story is sometimes surrounded around corruption. So everything as possible is something that we should do. And of course, like I said, stable policies help put appetite in investment. So these are crises that we have in the country. Um, compared to last year and this year, I've seen quite a number of things that have moved forward. Yes, but the fact that Nigeria is still susceptible to foreign fossil fuel foreign regulations, economies of scale in demand and process, and that affects our economy. So that should see how we can also work on bettering ourselves and make ourselves more economically viable without um, um, being driven or pushed around by demand and nature. So I hope this helps. Thank you.
Thank you so much, for presentation. We really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your shared thoughts in class. We'll be taking our last mentor for today, and then we'll move over to the mentees. So mentees, please try and get ready for your presentation. We'll be taking your presentation after the mentors, after Mr. Okeogene is done. So please try, like I said, try and get ready on your end for your presentation. So we would like to go over to Mr. Okeogene. You're welcome, sir. Thank you so much for being here in class. We're happy to have you on board. We will also want you to share your thoughts in today's class. Thank you so much, sir, for joining.
All right, Dennis. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, but it seems you may have another device that is echoing.
Excellent. I'll just take that one out. All right. So I've taken the second one out. Good afternoon, everyone. Dennis, thank you once more. Thank you to JIIPCC for having me share my thoughts. So thanks already to the mentors that are ahead. They've made my job really easy. Etulan is from my own side, which is the engineering side of things. He has gone ahead again to outline so many, numerous already options in the conversations we've had already. So I'll say well done to him for going ahead of me to ensure things align. For me, I will touch on exceptions, right? Just a few things I just want to think would share my thoughts on today. If you can see my screen, let me know, please. I'm trying to get my screen. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir, we can see your presentation.
Okay, excellent. Also, thank you to my dear friend Abayomi, Ayobami rather, for walking us through also his thoughts. I think the mentees on this call, and particularly on this session, you've really seen perspective from various mentors. Most of us have different perspective, different expertise. We've gone ahead again to layer it, both from the engineering side, from the policy side, from the legal side of things. And I think that's the benefit that we've had here today, where we've had Ayobami talk about policies, more on the generation, more on the preparation for new investors side, because he's really involved in that. What happens in the process where new energies come into place, we're adding it to where we are. And Etulan also went around the entire world, that global view, in talking about what's happening in Venezuela, giving an overview, because it come to think about it, when we talk about energy crisis, we look at it from a Nigerian perspective, right? But there's a global part of it, because we are only reacting to what has happened from the global scene. And I think it's been properly demonstrated on this call that we should look at energy from a global point of view, and that has helped us in shaping what's also happening in Nigeria. One of the things that came up very strongly and clearly is that energy is a global business, right? What happens on one side can have its impact on the other side. And again, this is very clear in the Russia-Ukraine war, that we understand that this war has something to do with energy, right? And its impact. And the impact of this war has hit Europe the most. We've seen policy change. We've seen people go back to, or the Europe particularly gone back to some of the decisions they made to rejig it to ensure that energy is constant, as the case may be. And again, it just shows the possibility of what can happen and what cannot happen. So I will just touch on a few things about the energy crisis, some of the impact and possible solutions. We'll look at it again. I'll try not to touch on what has been spoken about already. Global energy demand, like we all know, is currently increasing. Industries are opening in China, companies are opening in Nigeria. Our youth here, we're looking for band A again. So the demand is endless. Population is also increasing on every side. So we see that again from the demand side of things, energy is also increasing, right? We're all demanding we want our phone working. And to curb this increase in demand, that's where we're seeing energy efficiency, right? In the past, to charge your phones, when we used to buy the earlier chargers that we bought, the first generation chargers, they take a lot of energy to charge your phone. But now we have rapid chargers, even for electric cars, we have fast chargers that can charge in 2 minutes, that can charge in 5 minutes. You are driving and your battery has run down. Yes, it costs more to get that done again, but it shows the part that technology can play in energy demand, right? How do we better manage energy or conserve energy even from the point of use? Because this energy demand we're talking about is increasing. If you look at my chart, right, global demand is increasing for the past how many years? From 1990 till now, we've seen marked increase in demand, right? Not just from the fossil fuel end, but also from the renewable end, which we all can say at this point that is better for us to use. We're seeing Russia also leading another new regime in power generation with the nuclear energy that they are also pioneering, which we think is also a good one. But again, all these sorts of energies, most of them have their downside, and it's in managing this downside that we really need to be innovative, and we really need to see how we can manage that as we go ahead. All right, so beyond the demand side, there's the supply side. I think Tolan touched on that also. The supply side of it, there's been a recent concern on the Gulf of Guinea, and that concern has to do with pirates operating around the Gulf of Guinea, because most of the crude that comes out of Nigeria that goes around the world goes through the Gulf of Guinea, and there's been a lot of security issues around that side. So on the supply side as well, when we've struggled from our daily production in Nigeria to get crude out of the country, going to our partners, the payments have been made. We have concerns getting it out to those that have demanded for it. That's also some of the crises that come from the demand from the supply side. I talked about global corruption, also is another issue. I also touched on global politics. And these are some of the things that affect the demand and supply side of energy. And these are some of the things we need to be aware of. I think some of those things have been touched on already. Again, I just want to emphasize how important it is in managing that crisis. And again, so that we are aware what some of these concerns are. So if we go for global consumption, or what we think consumption will be, beyond fossil fuel or beyond the oil that we have, there's also gas, right? There's also renewable. There's also other sources of fuel. And we need to harness this, because with the increase in demand, how can we get energy to be delivered to the house or to the homes or to the industries outside of fossil fuel? I gave a typical example of the Gulf of Guinea. Let's assume that there's a lot of crisis in Gulf of Guinea and there's no more crude oil going in and out. How do we deal with energy requirements in Nigeria or in other countries? This now calls for you to have other sources of energy. And I think we talked about nuclear energy already as an option again that's being used. Some of the West African countries that have really had their cool, and that's the direction they are looking into. How do we use renewable? How do we use gas in country? These are some of the things that are being looked at again, so that we don't streamline ourselves. Poor infrastructure also is one of the source of energy crisis. I think about even talked about collapses in grid. We had all that happen again. Having proper infrastructure that can manage the energy sources is also another area. investment in infrastructure is currently at the highest at the moment. I work on an energy infrastructure company, so we're building and building and building to ensure that energy and gets to everyone. We're trying to optimize, but again, the issue of funding to expand this energy infrastructure is another issue. I was happy to hear from Abayomi that he can give me funds at 6%, 7%, 8%. So yeah, expect my call. I need those 6% deals because what we're getting is 9%, 10%. That seems to be high. So what that means is that lower funding from Nexim Bank or Afrexim Bank again can help us to do more with the less that we have, right? Because investments in the energy sector is reducing from Europe and from most of the United Nations generally because of this craving for more renewable kind of energy. So global emission is also another issue that has also impacted on energy or fossil fuel energies, as the case may be, because we're now looking to more less carbon intensive energy supplies, and that we see in gas, that we see in hydrogen, that we see in many other sources that we see, the biomass and these are the reasons why we are leaning to for all of this. If you go to the rural areas in Nigeria, you still see people using stove, you still see people using wood and all that. They have huge impact on the environment, and these are what we're talking about. This is the reason why we want to ensure that newer forms of energy are available that are safer, that give us clearer air to breathe. Again, we all know the impact. As we go down again, we'll see some of the impact as greenhouse effects, turbulence in different areas when you see different crises around the world, when you have earthquakes and cold, most of them are related to exploration activities that are not properly done already. So going for more less carbon intensive sources of energy, like renewables, is more desirable for us as people. But again, on the global scene, again, attracting more investment in more greener. This is what the world is looking towards, to get more of the greener sources. But again, on the supply side, on the demand side, these challenges we are having. Also, again, if we look at the infrastructure I mentioned, pipelines, and a lot of all these concerns, these are things that we want to do away with. If we have solar panels in our houses that give us energy, we might be less concerned with pipelines and some of those supplies. But it's neither here nor there. Having an integrated system, which is what I'm also going to emphasize as we go down, having an integrated system that will allow us to, put together all the sources of energy, having an integrated system where we can have grid supply, we can have renewable, we can have electric vehicles, we can have all them put together. That is where we are actually going to. So we're able to manage the market, we're able to manage the market manipulations, and also the global political interference in the energy business, as the case may be. So basically, by and large, my emphasis today and what I would like to drop on the table again, following what my other mentors have said, is energy crisis is here. How do we deal with it, right? How do we manage the crisis? First of all, we need to be aware where the sources of the crisis come from, right? We know it's political. We know it's global. Again, we know it's infrastructure based. We know it could be decision making from government. Then we need to look to how to manage. Because if countries like Nigeria, Venezuela, that are energy rich, are still having crisis in energy, then there is a problem, right? While less countries that have less fossil fuels or even access to energy have stable energy. So there's an imbalance which we need to look for a way to take advantage of. In Nigeria, generally, Nigeria is an energy-rich country, but we are still having issues with securing energy. But again, like Abayomi mentioned, the last 12 months have been months of a rapid increase in energy industry. The present administration is very, very keen on the energy industry to unlock the potential that Nigeria has. We have seen a lot of penetration into deep offshore gas sources, hydrocarbon sources, to ensure we're able to unlock quick access into energy. How do we get those our quick wins? How do we get those energies that are available? And we've been seeing some huge investments coming back to Nigeria, even those that were here before that have gone out. Means we are creating an enabling environment for foreign investors to come. And that's one of the things that can promote energy sufficiency. I want to say this for Nigeria. What Nigeria wants to achieve is energy security, where we cannot just secure for just ourselves, but also to be a net exporter of energy. And that's what we're doing for the past how many years. But again, we need to be able to meet our local demand, and then we export the extras that we're having. So a lot of gas plants are coming up, a lot of CNG plants, a lot of initiatives by federal government, a lot of policy shifts. And this is the only way for us to go. I really want to commend the current dispensation, current government for their emphasis on how things should go. And I was saying it, we will see more marginal fuels being released, more energy being tapped into, and more investment coming to Nigeria, and that will be very, very good for us. But again, we've also seen new business in Nigeria that has been opened up beyond the Niger Delta, Anambra Basin, and a few other basins that also hold a lot of energy. They are being explored now, so we can get our resources out, because the just energy transition we're talking about is not happening, right? Energy transition is happening, but it's not just, meaning that we are not being considered for our resources. We're not being considered for what we have. We just want to stop. I mean, the world is just asking for a suspension on fossil fuel. But again, the upturn in energy demand in the last decade with the war, with COVID, again, I think has favored us again. This is why Nigeria as a country, we need to get it right as we go ahead. All right, so we've seen energy law. For those of us that are law students here, I like to draw it home again so that we understand what we're doing. We have a part to play in understanding where energy is going to. Last week we talked about the renewable form of energy, understanding energy policy, energy laws. These are some of the things that are very, very key. And again, Abayomi will be your go-to guy when it comes to energy law, how to manage contracts, how to manage a few things in the energy space again, which where I know you play in supply chain, in different areas of the energy that you see. But again, there is hope for us in terms of how things are progressing. We need to generate our own homegrown solutions for our local communities, and that's why I'm happy to hear from energy experts to say local communities are seeing more penetration with energy. We are seeing investors going there to go and make mini solar plants, mini gas grid, mini plant. A lot of investment has happened in Nigeria, but the problem still goes back to what was happening before. How do the investors get their money back? Are we paying NEPA bills? Because again, you can see people in the time when when we had fuel subsidy, a lot of people were going with jerry cans to go and buy fuel, and it cost them a lot. But if we are getting energy to you at a cheap cost, are you happy, or are you happy to pay the cost? Or we are going back to the mentality that say, oh, it's our own product, or we are the owners of the Niger Delta, we are the owners of the oil. Why are we paying for them? So these are some of the mind shift that we need to have. But in terms of energy law and where most of you will play, and there's a lot of areas where you can look at in terms of this crisis. How do we deal with them? How do we communicate with our partners? How do we deal with government? How do we liaise with government properly to ensure? How do we mediate for different nations that are having issues? Russia, Ukraine, as the case may be. These are all political issues, and lawyers have a lot to do in terms of political and managing a lot of all this. We're also looking at the path where on the offshore side, in terms of energy, how are these prices going to be managed? How do we get cheap energy out to for our use? So basically, generally, we want to see that in the face of crisis, in the face of energy being manipulated, in the face of when we see that there's lack of fairness, there's balance in terms of resources and where you go to, what are the possible solutions that we have? And I put this question back to each and every one of you. What role can I play in ensuring that energy and energy crisis comes into play? How can I play in pollution? How can I play in equipment? How can I play in terms of infrastructure? These are all areas that lawyers can play in and ensure that things go better. In terms of those of us that are engineers that are in the place, opportunities are endless. Creating new solutions, creating new technology that will help us in generating energy backwards. How we can create sustainable equipment at homes that use very little or no. Again, if the demand side is lower, that means the supply or the need will also be lower, and that takes us to a more sustainable energy supply, and we need less. I'll leave you guys to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Okeogene, for your wonderful presentation, your shared thoughts in today's class. We really, really do appreciate everything you shared in class. So please, we would like to quickly go back to the mentees, all right, for your presentation. We are ready for you. We hope you are also ready for us. You have 10 minutes for each group. You have 10 minutes each for your presentation. So we would like to take group one's presentation and then we'll go over to group two. Right. So group one, if you're ready, you can kindly go ahead. Group presenter for group one, if you're ready, you can kindly go ahead, share your slides and start your presentation.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Amirat. Yes,
Yes,
good afternoon.
please, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I will be presenting for group one, and we will be presenting on the energy crisis, the impact and possible solutions. Okay. Energy is central to our daily lives. And when it becomes scarce or unreliable, it affects basically everything from our economy down to our social well-being. Energy is the foundation of modern civilization, power industries, healthcare, education, and transportation. So, the introduction. Different organizations have defined energy crisis in different ways. However, I feel a more encompassing definition could be that energy crisis is when energy becomes too scarce or too expensive to sustain normal life and growth. It can be global or local, short-term, long-term, or sometimes forces the government to maybe step in to measure, like implementing subsidies or rationing energy. Okay. In globally, the demand for energy rised after COVID-19 because the demand for energy was high and the supply could not keep up. The demand for energy exceed like the available energy to be supplied. And this also exposed how much the world still relies on fossil fuels and how little we have invested in our renewables. And how little we have invested in renewables. A local background and the Nigerian paradox. It's okay. In Nigeria, we see a big paradox because we are Africa's biggest biggest oil producer. Yet we still face constant blackouts, like almost every time. Installed capacity of 13,000 megawatts of installed capacity, and the only one we can actually generate is less than 5,000 megawatts. And this is low, and there's an imbalance, sort of. Active reasons for this may include the aging and weak transmission infrastructures, the frequent national grid collapsing, heavy reliance on expensive diesel generators, vandalism, and policy implementation gaps. And then we have the impact of energy crisis. Okay, when there is energy crisis, it like affects a lot of sectors, and one of which is the economic dimension. When there's energy crisis, there is increased cost of goods, services, because business are then forced to use an expensive alternative, such as generators. And when they do this, the operational costs increases. They spend more to operate more. Another one is lost productivity. When there's frequent outage, power outage, it disrupts the whole manufacturing process. You can imagine a company that produces 1,000 bottles in 24 hours with 24-hour energy, but the energy is cut down to, say, 12 hours in a day. They cannot, or they would not be able to produce as much or as many as they could before. So, lost productivity. And job losses. Studies link power outages to decline in employment and job quality as well. And then there's discouraged investment. No more foreign investors because there's power insecurity and nobody will want to invest in a lost cause. Another dimension is the environmental dimension. There is increased emission. Okay, when there is energy crisis, we opt for the next option. We use big generators that exude a lot of smokes that is harmful to the environment, a lot of carbon monoxide and the sort. Another is air pollution. It wasn't the air quality and leads to health issues. When we inhale air that is very contaminated, it can affect our lungs and the likes. Then ecosystem damage. It also affects the wildlife habitats and biodiversity, especially in areas like the Niger Delta and the likes. Okay, we have the social dimension as well. Okay, public health. It limits vaccine storage, clinical services, and increases indoor air pollution from kerosene or biomasses. Education. Unreliable power constrains study hours and digital learning. Yes, when there is let's say partial outage or total, it really constrains study hours. I remember there was a time in school that we didn't have light for about a week, and really a lot of us could not read at night. So we packed all our readings to like the afternoon, and it was very, very stressful. I think even told on our test. Inequality. The poor spend a higher income on inefficient fuels, while the wealthy afford private solutions, while the poor are still waiting on solutions or cannot even afford any alternative. The rich can maybe get money for their generators, diesel generators, or the likes, and then there is a huge gap between the poor and the rich. Energy poverty correlates strongly with higher poverty rates. Yes. Okay. Possible solutions to all these negative impacts of energy crisis. What are the likely or possible solutions we can achieve or we can do? One, expand renewables. We can diversify our energy resources, and we can reduce reduce reliance on fossil fuels and promote conservation strategies in industry and households. Like maybe when you're going out, you conserve your light, put off your lights, put off all your power generating stuff so we can conserve energy. And then there's technological innovation. We invest in smart grids and energy storage solutions. Okay, others include government policies. Okay, I think an electricity act was signed by the president in 2023. If we can be consistent with that, that can also be a solution. Also, international cooperation, shared technologies and financing for a global energy transmission. Also, public-private partnership can help fund big energy projects, while community-based solutions like the mini grid can help the rural areas. But there can be challenges to this implementation. The first one is financial and infrastructural limitation. As much as these solutions look beautiful and all, it can be challenging. A major challenge to implementing these solutions can be the adequate financial resources and poor infrastructures. For instance, the World Bank in 2020 highlighted that the sub-Saharan Africa faced like an annual infrastructure financing gap of nearly $100 billion. Yes, and this was undermining their efforts to provide essential services. So we can imagine if there is a big financial issue like that, it will be very hard to implement so many beautiful policies. Also, without sufficient funding, solutions like the renewable energy might not be sustainable. Also, we have public awareness and cultural barriers. Public awareness and cultural barriers. Even when solutions are readily available, the cultural attitude can disrupt their success. So there's a need for grassroots education. Also, the energy crisis has um, severe and economic, environmental, and social consequences. Yes. And recommendations include accelerate investments in renewable energy and grid infrastructure, strengthen policy implementation and combat corruption, foster international and public-private partnerships, and we can promote community-based solutions and public awareness campaigns throughout the rural areas. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Amirat, for your presentation. Well done to you and to your group members for putting together the presentation. We appreciate the effort of the team and everything you guys have shown in the commitment to work and ensuring your presentation is both timely ready and also that presentations are being able to take place in class. So we will be taking group two's presentation quickly also so that we can just quickly get feedback from our mentors. We will take a few questions and then we'll call it a day. All right, so the presenter for group two, please, you can come up and start your presentation also.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please, can you see my screen?
Yes, your screen is up, or your presentation is not yet up. Prosper, please, you will have to go back on mute and then go back to the presentation before you can start sharing. Okay. We hope he is able to join us back soon so that we can quickly take his presentation or the presentation from two. So Prosper, if you are having issues sharing, can I do that on your behalf? Okay.
I was having issues sharing my screen, but one of my teammates has done that. So,
All right.
good afternoon, everyone. So, we'll be talking about the energy crisis, impacts, and solutions. So next slide, please. So the energy crisis, this refers to
Okay, is our presenter no longer with us? Prosper, I can see you're
Sorry.
back on the call. Please go ahead.
Okay, so yes, as I was saying, the energy crisis is one of the constant threats that have developed, especially after the pandemic season, because most countries had to had a higher demand. Their demand for supply shot up. The energy we rely on from daily life, from powering our homes to fueling our cars, is now a complex global issue tied to everything from climate change to international conflict. Um, Mr. Iola referenced the Ukraine and Russia conflict. Finding a way forward isn't about one single fix, but a holistic approach that weaves together innovation, smart policies, reliant infrastructure, and a change in our own habits. Solutions to the global energy crisis can be executed in four stages. An example of the energy crisis is Nigeria. Last year, our country had several power outages due to over reliance on fossil fuels and the high demand that was being taxed on our national grid. Sorry, next slide, please. So now we'll be talking about the technological revolution, and under this we have three new ways that energy is being revolutionized. And the first one is solar power. This is energy gotten from the sun, and modern solar panels can achieve conversion efficiencies of up to 40%. These systems are highly flexible as well as being adaptable, and they provide a reliable energy source for both off-band and off-grid rural areas. But we must first of all understand that in Africa, especially Nigeria, solar panels is most almost like a luxury for the people, especially those in rural areas and those with lesser income. So these are some of the ways that we can help make solar energy affordable for people. Government should incentivize, they should subsidize the purchase and installation of solar panels, as well as promote green bonds with other countries. They should build solar research facilities so that solar panels can be locally produced in our country, and this would help to make it affordable and accessible for those living in rural areas. Because we should it's very important to know that most people in urban areas already have access to solar panels, but the major people that do not are people living in rural areas. Some of the impacts of solar power include reduction in greenhouse emissions, economic in growth, grid reliance. So another means of technological revolution in the energy industry is wind and water. Modern onshore wind turbines are highly efficient with energy conversion efficiencies ranging from 40 to 50%. Meanwhile, hydroelectric power plants are known for their high efficiency, often exceeding 90%, and their ability to quickly adjust to stabilize the power grid. In Nigeria, we have some examples of energy plants like the hydro Kanji water dam. This helps to produce energy through water. Then another one is the geothermal. These are this is energy gotten from the earth's heat. This from beneath the earth's surface. They include from hot rocks, magma, steam, and hot water. An example of this, Iceland. In Iceland, the country Iceland, all energy are gotten from renewables, but about 70% of this is gotten from hydro, while 30% of their energy is gotten from geothermal. The United States of America is also one of the world's largest total geothermal capacity, especially in California and Nevada. We have hybrid systems. An advantage, a way to improve geothermal energy systems is to combine it with solar or wind for better energy mix. And some of its advantages are that it leaves small land footprints and also very low carbon emissions. Next slide, please. So yes, the policy playbook here. Governments around the world can step into to guide the energy transition from fossil fuels to renewable. The policy countries adopt are not one size fits all. They are tailored to their unique challenges. Like now, for example, Nigeria is just leaving renewable fossil fuels and transitioning into renewables. But other countries like the United States of America and Japan, as well as China, these countries are already using renewable energies, and as such their policies will be quite different from Nigeria's own. So Europe's geopolitical shift. Following the 2022 energy shock caused by the invasion of Ukraine, we saw that Europe realized its dangerous dependence on imported fossil fuels. In response, the EU launched the REP Power EU plan to drastically cut its reliance on Russian gas and accelerate the use of renewables. In Africa, we also saw that the energy crisis is more about a lack of access. Over 600 million people in the continent still lack electricity. Policies here are designed to expand infrastructure as well as encourage investments. For example, South Africa's Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program has attracted billions in private investment, while Ethiopia's Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is set to provide over 5,150 megawatts of power. Um, so I believe that most countries here, for now, Africa has taken the right step in the right direction by embracing policies which help to promote renewable energy and help to cut down on its over dependence and over reliance on fossil fuels. So, next slide, please. So now the resilient infrastructure. There are three stages here to build a resilient infrastructure that is free from attack. The first one is protecting it from nature. Our infrastructure is vulnerable to natural disasters like hurricanes, wildfires, and floods. To adapt, we must build climate resilience designs, strengthen the grid, and install distributed energy resources like solar and wind to decentralize power. A country doesn't, because of a hurricane, a country doesn't need to go into total blackout. Some of the ways that we can improve this are, an example of this is Japan. After the 2011 Fukushima disaster, it expanded decentralized renewable microgrids in quake-prone areas. These microgrids refer to localized grids that can disconnect from the central grid and run on its own independently. Another example of this is California. Fire-prone areas use community solar battery hubs to remain powered during grid shutoffs. Puerto Rico is also investing in microgrids after the Hurricane Maria destroyed 80% of its grids. Countries around the world should invest in creating decentralized microgrids which are different from their central grid so as to avoid a total blackout. They could also invest in underground pipelines for places where they are prone to fire or hurricanes. Next, the second stage is also guarding from cyber threats. Cyber threats has become one of the world's most prone attacks in recent times. We could see in Ukraine when their national grid was attacked by hackers in 2015 and 2016, which caused the blackouts affecting over 230,000 people. This was the first ever confirmed cyber attack to successfully shut down a power grid. Also in India, an attack on the Mumbai grid, which was reported to have been linked to Chinese state-linked hackers, as well as in South Africa, where the ESCOM ransom threats were affected their national grid in 2019. Countries should learn to put their grids offline and put double encryption protection to avoid attacks from hackers. So the next one is to build a resilient energy infrastructure. There should be several strategic adaptations. One of these includes upgrading aging components with modern alternatives to improve grid reliability and reduce failure rates due to component fatigue. An example of this is Nigeria. Nigeria's power national grid was built in a time when it was just starting up, and as such, the supply for the demand for energy was able to be met due to our population being very low at that time. But now, with the increase in population and so much industrial activities, they are taking a toll on the national grid, which wasn't built to accommodate this large amount of people. And as such, Nigeria and other countries like this should work towards improving their old infrastructures to provide grid reliability. The implementation of advanced monitoring technology such as sensors and remote systems will also enable us to detect early faults and predictive maintenance, allowing for a faster response to issues. Next slide, please. So the human element. So the final stage for focusing on how our individual and collective behaviors can drive change. The first one is education and awareness. Behavior is a major source of energy savings. When people are educated on how their actions affect eh, our energy, when people are educated on how their actions affect energy use, we can help encourage our members of our community to conserve, and this will help create a very powerful shift. The second one is also understanding our cultures. For most people, they see energy as a lifestyle or a cultural fit. So when they are encouraged to reduce, it will help to reduce energy energy shifts. Thank you.
Okay. So you're done with your presentation, I guess. Oh, all right. Thank you very
Yes, I
much.
am.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prosper, for your presentation, and thank you to Ifoma for helping share your slides. Well done to you and to your team members for putting together your group presentation. We really appreciate the efforts and the time the team puts together to work on it. So what we'll be doing quickly is that we'll be going back to mentors for feedback. We'll take feedback from mentors, and then we'll take a few questions and call it a day. So we'll start back from the top. We'll go back to Mr. Etulam. We would like for you to share your thoughts on the presentations that were made by the mentees. Mr. Etulam, if you're with us, we'd like to hear from you.
Okay. Okay. For group one, well done to all the guys. The presenter, Adebayo, Amira. So far, I will just make kind of a joint feedback. A bit of the so far, I think the presentation slides have improved a lot with these current mentees compared to what I've been seeing in terms of the presentation, which is, I would say, is a plus so far. The layout and how it's been done a bit more better than before. Well done to Adebayo, Amirat, and Prosper for that, for both group one and group two. Also within the grasp of the concept for presentation. I think it's in terms of presentation is good. Also tell maybe one or two of the network issues might impact. Most of the slides always have top pictorial views to be able to express certain issues as relates to what you're trying to present in a very concise way and sharp to the point than having a lot of clogged tasks all around. And basically, I'm very impressed so far with the presentations and the concepts. My fellow mentors will be able to talk more in terms of other areas and they be observed. So kudos to Amirath and kudos to Prosper for Group 1 and Group 2 and all of you that put hands together to be able to make this presentation. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Etsulam. We'll be going to Mr. Ayobami. Mr. Ayobami, we would like to also get your thoughts on the presentation, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I must apologize. I'm having back-to-back calls, so I was not truly. I didn't concentrate so much on your discussions. But I must say that what I noticed from the two groups now is I wanted to more of your voice, your personal conclusions on how things should be, more of what you think it is and how you think it can be resolved. They were talking about possible solutions here now. Yes, and also referencing also, I must repeat myself on this. As much as possible, you want to put in your referencing because one, it lets us know where you got your source from. And maybe because I'm a bit into academics also, and I'll tell you that it helps to give credence to whatever thing you are saying. And even if we as mentors have never heard of what you're saying, which is also more like a learning curve for us, it makes us know that, oh, the source is genuine enough for us to say, okay, let's place so much credence to whatever you're saying. So, yes. Yes, I mean, the slides were good. I mean, you guys discussed quite good things that are happening around, which is very good. I most especially liked the group two's presentation on technology. The beauty about technology is that in any sector you are in, technology is taking over. You will hear Slum BJ now, one transitioning from being known as a oil and gas service company to a technology company. Yes, to a technology company, and and so this and this is quite important because that's the advent of technology in everything you do, basically. Yes. And so now we're talking about smart grids in power, talking about AI and hackers, talking about intelligent pigs in pipelines, So these are things whereby technology plays also a big part in energy, and that's a good, that's a futuristic, and anyway, it's not so futuristic in advanced countries, but it's still something that I think we're warming its way into Nigerian electric sector now. So kudos to that. In all, good work and great presentations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ayobami, for your thoughts that you shared. We'll be taking the last feedback from Mr. Okeogene, and then we'll take questions. Mr. Okeogene, we'll just also want to hear from you quickly your thoughts about the presentation, sir.
All right. Thank you, Williams, for the opportunity again. Thank you to the other mentors, Ayobami, Tulan again for your comment. If the mentees had paid attention to what the other two mentors have said, there's been consistent improvement in what has been delivered by both Group 1 and Group 2. So kudos to the two of you. And I think you deserve a round of applause for yourselves. The better quality presentation was a better quality. Your PowerPoint presentations were far better than they used to be. So from when you began 3-4 weeks ago to where we are today, There's been personal improvement, and this is the key about life, right? Personal improvement is where growth must start from if you want it to be if you want it to be sustainable. So yes, both teams have done well. Amirab and Adebayo from Group One. Very good presentation. Very confident speaker. She talked about not just the crisis but also possible solutions, and that's what I like about this presentation. Both teams talk about solution, right? You're not only just highlighting the crisis, right? You put yourself in the shoes and say, okay, what can you do? Proffering solution in terms of just saying this can be done, that's a lot, that you have done a lot, because you are painting a narrative, because you're pointing a direction. Whether it has been identified before or not, it shows critical thinking. That you guys not just go somewhere and look at it, but some level of depth of analysis went into it. I hear Amira, she talked about conservation, very, very important. How do we reduce our culture, to using less energy, as one of the solutions? And that makes sense, right? Less on fossil fuel, more on the other, more on a more renewable source. Yes, I agree with that in a way. But I want to disabuse the mind of the mentees with what is going on in the world. Everybody wants to criticize renewable, wants to criticize fossil fuel, you know, carbon and all that. I think the journey has gone very far. We've gone from coal to oil, not to gas. I want you to look at it from the point of development and improvement and technology, that has come into this. While it's easy for the Western world to criticize the use of it because they don't generate it, because they are not the owners of this thing, right? It's easy for them to criticize. And by criticizing, they are also bringing options that they are involved in production, right? They are selling a narrative, solar panel, they're selling a narrative on certain equipment, talking about windmills, right? We don't produce these things, right? So that means we should leave our fossil fuel and go to them to go and take something that they call that is safe, right? While I understand what they are saying, we need to have sense, as the case may be. We need to exhaust what we have. We need to create our own technology. Even if we're taking borrowed technology, we need to be wise about that. That's why policy structure come into place in how we're doing this. And I think the Nigerian NUPROC and the agencies, they're doing a very good job at that. So we need to disabuse the mind of these foreign bodies, these international bodies, because they have their own interests at heart, right? While we understand that carbon has impacted on the environment, or our contribution to this carbon emission is so low, it's so small. So they are calling the bluff, or they are missing the foul, and they're the ones that fouled. I want this to sink in very well with the mentees. The foul that the Western world is calling is the foul that they caused, right? We did not cause that foul. Even our impact to that foul is less than 2.5% of it. So why are you crying and pointing at that direction that we shouldn't use it? And the beauty of it is that the technology that's going to come up in the future is that even crude oil can now be created into gas. It can be compressed and it becomes gaseous form, and we use it as gas. And gas is less carbon intensive. Also, the issue of carbon capture has also come. Carbon that they said is bad for the environment, we've been able to capture carbon and use for other sources. Carbon crediting also, we talked about in the last one. We talked about a lot of use of carbon and also that transition process. The fizzy drink you drink today, most of the things that we use, the shoes we wear, carbon is involved in it. The carbon that we are captured again from these processes are used. So yes, in as much as we want to criticize it, they also have the point that we can actually develop from, and we need to be mindful of that. So we don't want to the West is good as poisoning our mind, getting us to fight against our resources that we have. Meanwhile, they've come to take all the resources free. They use it to develop their own nations. It's time to develop ours, and it's the same thing they use that we're going to use. All right. Going back to the presentations again after my advice, I think Amirab talked about technology as a very important tool. Geothermal policies, finance gap. You mentioned $1 billion. Spot on. Very, very good research you have done. So you did very well, Amira, for Group 1. Going to Group 2, again, very intelligent presentation. I liked the teamwork at play in Group 2, right? Prosper presented, Ifoma shared the screen, right? When he was having crisis, Ifoma came to the rescue. That means they are mindful of what they are doing. They understood the limitation of where Prosper was, what he was doing, the limitation he had, and then Ifoma came up. And that's a sense of what we are trying to do in the energy sector, right? If one operator is failing, somebody is feeling not doing the right thing, somebody else should be able to come up again. It is that versatility that Group 2 has developed. That's what we're trying to do in the industry today. If one source of all energy is not working, we switch to the next one. If somebody is having issue in Lagos State, somebody did mention rural areas are the areas to use to benefit from newer form of energy, which is right. Most of the developed areas already are connected to the developed grid, which they are already using conventional energy, right? So new energy will come in again. So that adaptability, that's need for new technology again that we have seen demonstrated between both of them is quite key. So well done, Group 2. You talked about energy crisis in our assessment. Very key. You mentioned um, energy crisis in Africa is not sorry, is not about availability. It's about access, and I agree with you. Right? We cannot be complaining. Nigeria will have a lot of energy, right? We are only talking about how do people get access to this energy. We're not talking about energy, so that clarity is quite important, and you touched on that already. You also did mention a few about climate resilience design and where ESG comes into place. Talk about cyber attack, very, very important. You cited very good examples in Japan, in Mumbai, in South Africa. I mean, very, very good examples. Protecting our infrastructure, a lot that was mentioned here. I'm quite impressed. I've seen the development, I've seen the improvement, I've seen the resilience, I've seen the strength that these teams have put into this work, and I'm quite proud that we are able to mold humans into a better energy expert as we get into the industry. My last comment is try to have a conclusion of your own. Try to have a mind of your own. Don't rely on this person said so. The Western countries said this. United Nations said so. Sit down and think through it, because there is a narrative in those conversations, right? There is a mindset. Okay, there is a winner and a loser in those conversations. Rethink your own and get your own mindset, and choose the players in the sector that you think you want to play with, and who becomes the winner, because we must win in our own game. While they are winning their own side, we must also look for a way to win the narrative also in our game as local lawyers, as local engineers, as Nigerians, also hustling in this same energy industry. Those will be my comments now to the mentees. Well done to you all, and thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for your shared thoughts. Thank you to all the mentors that have shared their feedback to the mentees. We thank you for highlighting areas where you feel the mentees have done well and areas where there needs to be improvements. This is one of the reasons why we take presentations in class, because overall we want the mentees to not just be aware of the sector. We also want to sharpen their skills, and we also want to make them better. So please, we'll be taking pardon me, we'll be taking questions for the mentees. If you still have any question for today's class, you can go ahead and ask. Do we have questions in class for the mentees? Mentees, do we have questions? Do we have questions? Okay. Clinton, please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the mentors, and once again, thank you so much to everybody that is making this whole internship/mentorship possible. Straight to my question. Recently, I've seen reports about the CATL, which is the Contemporary Amperex Technology Co. Ltd., a Chinese battery manufacturer and technology company. I heard that they are set to begin mass production of sodium-ion batteries, which are in many ways similar to lithium-ion batteries, but they perform at a similar level. However, it seems the sodium-ion batteries cost way less in terms of raw materials to make and all that. So speculation suggests that this will revolutionize the renewable energy industry and make it more, let me say, democratized, because sodium is abundant in our environment and it's easy to make and produce said batteries. So I just want to ask, I would like to hear the thoughts of our mentors. What do they think about this innovation? If they have come across it, well, what do they think about it, and how can it really affect the industry as we know it today? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Clinton, for your question. Please, we just want to keep this question as an open question to the mentors. Any mentor that would like to share their thoughts in regards to this question, please, we would like to give the floor to them in form of an open discussion.
Okay. I think who asked the question? Mr. Eroa Reveal, right? Okay. In terms of looking at, sorry, it's a mentor, it's who the speaker. In terms of looking at this, all the sodium batteries in light with lithium batteries, basically, we are more aware of lithium batteries in terms of EVs and how they have high energy density to be able to be used for electric um, vehicles and other portable electronics. Maybe very limited knowledge in terms of what the sodium aspect comes into play. But what I could definitely say is in terms of lower cost and abundance for the sourcing of sodium, it's more or less where it's coming into play. But I think it's not going to replace the lithium batteries in retrospect generally because of the high energy density for that comes with lithium, but it's will complement in terms of abundance and also maybe it could help in the if you search maybe further you can be able to discover that Atlantis has better performance in terms of colder temperature and maybe faster charging, but I think it will not replace the lithium battery. So I think maybe these are some of the benefits in terms of cost and resources availability that they are looking at it. So, what of sodium comes with in terms of salt deposit and seawater, which is rather cheaper to mine than lithium also, which is very much more will be expensive process. So, but they will not replace lithium batteries. This is what I can.
Sorry if I may add something. I know I can't say more than Epsilon would say, or they are the experts in it, but it still goes back to the discussion we had on research and development. Unfortunately, these are things we should do more in our universities in Nigeria, which we don't. So there are various forms of other technology whereby we can harness with maybe basically the raw materials we have around. So, but we keep on talking about things been happening in Asia and North America and Europe, and really little is being done in Nigeria. I had a visit to, I was discussing with someone in Oxfordshire. They call them Tokamat technology. Yeah, and they do energies and they use fusion power. So talking about something that had to do with a superconducting magnets, making power. So these are people that are gone far ahead of us, and they had the UK energy, I think energy agency invest I think around $50 million there. Then the US also invested in the company. So that's a small company in when it comes to number of people doing kind of great in the energy. So the focus should be more on how do we do that in Nigeria, which will become more cheaper for us, more sustainable, which we really have the raw materials around. So it's a good point, but R&D needs to be, we need to invest in R&D in Nigeria. That's quite important to me. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ayobami, for adding that point to it. We really do appreciate your shared thoughts. So we'll be taking maybe one more question. So please, for the mentees, if there's still a question we'd like to ask, we can go ahead and do that. But before we take more questions from the mentees, I think I have a personal question I would like to ask in this regards. And my question is, okay, concerning energy crisis, we see the way the EU is shaped to help member states to combat crisis. So with the issue with Ukraine and Russia. There are options to buy from other places. The EU is setting up itself to go back to other options that is viable for all its members. Do we have those kind of structural arrangements for Africa or in Africa where we have more of shared policy of trade and investments in terms of energy, where energy can be purchased within the African continent and transported in between, and we can have access to cheaper forms of energy within that sense from other neighboring countries. Is that discussion happening currently, or is something that is still off the table and we are dealing with other things?
If I may answer, yes, on paper, we do have some kind of organizations that try together, and I mean, I think there's an African single electricity market body. We try and see how far we can, but is it as effective as the ones we have in Western nations? I don't think so. But it's but I know that the whole policy of like after that's the African free trade, so it's supposed to promote things like that, not specifically to energy now, but in a broader sense, and but except for countries that give neighboring countries electricity and some few pipelines that we have across countries. Very quite little is being done in that aspect. So I think each country is still focusing on its energy needs, and these are not things that are driven in a large scale like we have in ECOWAS or we have in the AU. The other those are organizations for for more than energy alone. So not specifically driven to energy. So I think it's a good point that it's something that we should have. If you have a OPEC kind of in for African countries alone would also be a very good one. Have but I know that there are a lot of series of pipelines. There was a complaint in it's a complaint that I almost consulted for. They have pipelines across 3 or 4 countries in Africa, and they're building more. So yes, so you see more of pipelines across countries, but sharing energy concerns together. And I mean, apart from the African single markets initiative, I don't think I've heard of any other one. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
All right, thank you very much, sir. That answers my question. So yeah, I think basically we can call it a day. I think we have tackled energy crisis to the best of the ability that this class can carry. All right, so thank you to our mentors for everything that you have shared, at least within an hour plus. Almost 2 hours plus, we have been able to extensively look at some of the issues and matters that concern the energy industry, and particularly how it relates to us in Nigeria here, and not just Nigeria, across Africa. So I want to thank our mentors for doing justice to the topic and the subject matter for today. Just before we go, like we do, right? Please, I would like for us to turn on our videos for the mentees, right? Let's quickly take a picture of today's class, and then we can quickly call it a night. Thank you so much, Mr. Islam. Thank you, Mr. Ayobami. Can we have mentees turn on their videos, please? We'd like for you to do that. Thank you also, Mr. Okiogene. Please, I want to see mentees turn on their video. If we can have everyone turn on their videos, we would really, really do appreciate. Mentees, please, can we turn on our videos? Let's quickly do that so that we can take our picture quickly as we wrap up with today's class. All right, thank you, Daniel. All right, so we've been able to take our pictures. Thank you so much to everyone that has been in class today. For the mentees, for the energy industry itself, we have one more session to go. All right, so please, let's do well to make ourselves available. We'll be tackling quite a lot in our next class, so please make sure to be present and available in class. Make sure to like we have been doing, right? Keep up with presentations and ensure that, you know, our presentation are done well and the research is done well also. To all the mentors that have been on call and with us from beginning to the end of class, we say a big thank you. Thank you so much for your shared time, your shared knowledge in class. We really do appreciate. Once again, happy belated birthday, Mr. Ayobami. We wish you all the very best. All right. Good day, everyone, or goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. Please do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.